tried this yesterday, and there was just so much noise out here. There was chickens in the neighborhood just sounding off loud like crazy. There was sirens going up the roads. There was all kinds of traffic making all kinds of noise. So it didn't work out yesterday, so I'm gonna try it again. So if we'll see how this works out today. Alright, so what I want to do here, I want to talk about this book here, some things in it. I'm going to read just a little of it, but I'm going to talk about some of the stuff in it too. I don't want to do a lot of reading. I want to talk about some things. This is a really good book here, The Field by Lynnne McTaggart. It's a really good book. This is about quantum physics. So some more stuff I'm talking about that relates to what we're doing. But there's some things in here that I want to talk about. And I will read a little. Okay, so I'm talking about this, well, I'm going to read a little bit here first. This quantum physicist named Pribram. Okay, so I'm going to read a little. And let's see, I wanted to get his full name. Okay, so what I'm starting with here is talking about Carl Pribram. He was a young neurosurgeon, and like right here it says he relocated to Florida. He had relocated to Florida just to do research with a man called Lashley. Alright, so what I want to go through here is I'm going to read a little. He was studying the brain, and they were trying to figure out what part of the brain keeps the memory, and they come to find out that the memory is like distributed all throughout the brain through wave patterns and frequencies. So that's what I'm talking about here today is the brain and the frequencies of our memories and all. Alright, so I'm going to start by reading just a little bit, and then there's a couple interesting things in here that I want to get to also to tell you about in here. Alright, so according to Pribram's theory, when you first notice something, certain frequencies resonate in the neurons in your brain. So he's talking about when you first notice something. So like with me sitting here, if all of a sudden I noticed there was something over here that I hadn't noticed it before, and it's saying that the frequencies are resonating in my brain that's causing me to realize that's there, to notice it. So these neurons send information about these frequencies to another set of neurons. The second set of neurons makes a Fourier translation of these resonances and sends the resulting information to a third set of neurons, which then begins to construct a pattern that eventually will make up the virtual image you create of the apple out in space on top of the fruit bowl. So this threefold process makes it far easier for the brain to correlate separate images, which is easily achieved when you are dealing with wave interference, shorthand, but extremely awkward with an actual real-life image. So they're talking about the brain sending out frequencies and pattern frequencies to the parts of the body, and not just like an image. So after seeing, Pribram reasoned, the brain must then process this information in the shorthand of wave frequency patterns and scatter these throughout the brain in a distributed network, like a local area network, copying all major instructions for many employees in the office. So storing memory in wave interference patterns is remarkably efficient and would account for the vastness of human memory. Okay, and then here's part two that I wanted to talk and show you. So the waves can hold unimaginable quantities of data, far more than 280 quintillion bits of information, which supposedly constitute the average human memory accumulated through an average lifespan. So over our lifespan, I just want to show you over our lifespan, 280 quintillion. So I just want to show you all the zeros there. Look at all the zeros in the 280 quintillion. So that's how many bits of information that we'll collect in our brains over our lifetime. Because I know we're always learning all the time. Okay, it's been said that with holographic wave interference patterns, all of the U.S. Library of Congress, which contains virtually every book ever published in English, would fit onto a large sugar cube. So talking about a large sugar cube would hold all of that information for the whole U.S. Library of Congress, all the books in English that would fit onto that sugar cube. The holographic model would also account for instant recall of memory, often as a three-dimensional image. So Pribram's theories about the distributed role of memory and the wavefront language of the brain met with a great deal of disbelief, especially in the 1960s when they were first published. So chief among those ridiculing the theory of distributed memory was Indiana University biologist Paul Piech. So that's what they would do. A lot of these scientists and quantum physicists, when they would figure something out and do a paper on it and study, and like I said, they'd write a paper on it and publish it, and then you would have other physicists come behind them and think that they're wrong, and then they would do their own study and try to prove that person's wrong. And then sometimes they would actually, by doing the study on themselves trying to prove the other person's wrong, they would end up proving them right. So and like here, this Paul Piech, he's working at the Indiana University as a biologist. So there's a lot of them here like that throughout this book that worked at different universities and labs. Okay, in earlier experiments, Piech had discovered that he could remove the brain of a salamander, and although the animal became comatose, it would resume functioning once the brain was put back in. So if Pribram were right, then some of the salamander's brain could be removed or reshuffled, and it shouldn't affect its ordinary function. Alright, but Piech was certain that Pribram was wrong, and he was fierce in his determination to prove it so. In more than 700 experiments, alright, so he took more than 700 salamanders, and he took their brains out, and he did all kinds of different things to their brains. So I'm not going to read all through this, what he actually did. This goes into pretty good detail of what he did to them. So he would take the brain out, he would do things to it, put the brain back in, and then once the salamander recovered, they would go right back to life like normal. Everything they normally did before, they were doing it again. Everything normal. 700 salamanders, 700 different experiments. Okay, so he ended up proving Pribram right, doing his studies like that and his experiments. Alright, so he went from being a complete skeptic, he converted over to Pribram's view that memory is distributed throughout the brain, and it, from what they're saying in here, it does that by frequencies. So I keep talking about energy, frequencies, vibrations. Our brains are collecting frequencies and sending frequencies out. So Pribram's theories were also vindicated in 1979 by a husband and wife team of neurophysiologists at the University of California at Berkeley. So Russell and Karen DeValos converted simple plaid and checkerboard patterns into Fourier waves and discovered that the brain cells of cats and monkeys responded not to the patterns themselves, but to the interference patterns of their component waves. So countless studies elaborated on by the DeValos team in their book Spatial Vision show that numerous cells in the visual system are tuned into certain frequencies. So saying that the cells in the brain are tuned to certain frequencies. So that's why I wanted to get into reading this, because of the frequencies and talking about the brain. So other studies by Fergus Campbell of Cambridge University in England, as well as by a number of other laboratories, also showed that the cerebral cortex of humans may be tuned to specific frequencies. So then here's more scientists working at universities, at different universities, ones in England. So this would explain how we can recognize things as being the same, even when they are vastly different sizes. So Pribram also showed that the brain is a highly discriminating frequency analyzer. He demonstrated that the brain contains a certain envelope or mechanism which limits the otherwise infinite wave information available to it, so that we are not bombarded with limitless wave information contained in the 0-point field. So the 0-point field, that's what this book is talking about, the field, the 0-point field, that's all of this empty air and space out here in front of us that we think is just air. There's actually energy in this. All this out here that's just air, and everything in front of us, there's energy. That's where Nikola Tesla was pulling all of his electrical energy to have free electricity. He was just pulling it out of the air, because it's what they're calling the 0-point field. So I think there's a lot of things happening in our research that go along with or coincide with the 0-point field. I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of the Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Dogmen, the things that we're having going on here. The orbs, the UFOs, the paranormal stuff, the ghosts. I think all has a lot of connection here with this 0-point field and the frequencies. Okay, so what I wanted to get at too here also was here's another part. So at one point Pribram came across the work of the Russian Nikolai Bernstein. So Bernstein had made films of human subjects dressed entirely in black costumes, and he would take white tape and make dots on their limbs, on their arms and legs, and then he would have them stand behind a black curtain, or stand in front of a black curtain. So they're wearing all black. He's got them standing in front of a black curtain. He's got the white dots on their arms and legs, and he has them move around in front of the camera and filming it, so that when he's actually done with that, then he goes back and looks at the film. You cannot see the people because of all the black, but you can see the dots. You can see all the white dots moving around. and then he even got to where he could figure out where they were going to move next. So he could actually predict their next movements from watching the film and how they're moving, how those white dots are all moving. He could actually predict the next movement. So the fact that movement could somehow be represented formally in terms of Fourier equations made Pribram realize that the brain's conversations with the body might also be occurring in the form of waves and patterns rather than as images. So the brain somehow had the capacity to analyze movement, break it down into wave frequencies, and transmit this wave pattern shorthand to the rest of the body. So he's talking about how he figured out the brain wasn't actually like sending visual images to parts of the body, it was sending frequencies. Pribram also came across evidence that our other senses, our smell, our taste, and our hearing, operate by analyzing frequencies. So our smell, our taste, and our hearing is actually analyzing frequencies. That's how it operates. Okay, and then this is pretty cool here, listening. Once I read this is a pretty cool story right here. So Walter Schempp, a mathematics professor from the University of Siegen in Germany, he believed he was simply carrying on the work of his ancestor Johannes Kepler, an astronomer working in the 16th and 17th centuries. So Kepler famously claimed on his book Armamas Mundi that people on Earth could hear the music of the stars. Okay, so he was following along with that scientist there. But what I wanted to get at here was Walter Schempp. Okay, in 1986, Walter had published a book which proved mathematically how you could get a hologram from the echoes of the radio waves received in radar, so which came to be regarded as a classic in state-of-the-art radar. So also Schempp began thinking that the same principles of wave holography might apply to magnetic resonance imaging, which is the MRI. So everybody's familiar with the MRI that the doctors use. And alright, my battery died on the camcorder, so I had to go get my batteries and switch it out. Alright, so I really wanted to get to this part here because I thought this was really interesting, so I went in and got another battery here and got this switched out. So I wanted to get back to this with y'all. So 1986, the Walter Schempp, he had was wanting to study the MRI machine, the magnetic resonance imaging. So what he had to do before he could even touch the machine, so he had to study medicine, biology, and radiology in order to become trained as a doctor before being able to use the equipment. So he had to go through all that and become a trained doctor before he could put his hands on the machine. So he accepted a place offered by Johns Hopkins Medical School in Baltimore, Maryland, which has the best outpatient radiology department in the USA, and later trained at Massachusetts General Hospital, which is affiliated with MIT. So after a fellowship in radiology in Zurich, Walter was finally able to return to Germany, where he now had the appropriate qualifications to officially lay hands on the machine. So he had to go through all that training and all that schooling and all to become a doctor. So what he ended up doing, he ended up becoming an expert on the MRI machine, and he took and when they first come out with the MRI machine back in 1986, people were having to sit in it, sit still for 4 hours or longer. And what he did, he cut that down to 20 minutes. With what he was able to do with the machine from all that training. And he cut that down, all that time where people were having to lay there for 4 hours for the machine to scan them. He cut that down to 20 minutes. I thought that was really cool reading that. Okay, so I'm trying not to bore you too much. So I just wanted to kind of go over that some of the things that I was reading in here that I thought was really interesting. So The Field by Lynnne McTaggart, and this has been pretty interesting. So quantum physics and studying on it is really not that difficult, and you can get an understanding if you're reading stuff like this on it. You can get an understanding of it without having to worry about like doing all the math and all that stuff. So you don't have to become a quantum physicist and know how to do all that math and all that stuff to get an understanding of it, understanding what's going on. And we have a lot of technology today because of quantum physics. Because it started back in 1690, and I cover a lot of stuff about the light spectrum, the radio waves, the AM and FM radio that we all listen to on the radio stations. All that's part of the quantum physics and the light spectrum. X-rays, gamma rays, all that stuff like that. It's part of quantum physics and the light spectrum. So I'll talk about that quite a bit, and I'll try to kind of break things down as much as I can so people can understand it. Reading stuff like this, reading the beginner's guides to quantum physics, a couple of those. I have a playlist if you want to go on my channel, on my playlist on my channel there. I have a bunch of videos of quantum physics. If you want to go through there and read and watch some of those to kind of get a little understanding. But this is going to answer a lot of things that's going on with the portals, the dimensions, all that stuff, the cloaking, all the stuff we're having going on with orbs, UFOs, ghosts, paranormal, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all that stuff, all the different cryptids. I think the quantum physics is answering a lot of stuff there with that, and while we're not actually able to see some of the things that the cameras are catching, because if you're watching my videos, you're seeing I'm catching all kinds of stuff on camcorder, GoPro, especially the thermal camera, picking up heat. The thermal camera works off of heat, so it works day or night, it doesn't matter, and it's picking up heat. So I'm catching all kinds of stuff like that with the heat. I'm catching orbs, I'm catching the Sasquatch, and all the thermal camera that came about because of quantum physics too. It's all part of the light spectrum. Alright, so I'm going to cut it here and hopefully not bore you too much.